One man's generosity helped turn swampland into a beautiful park with a swimming pool, a nature trail, disc golf, a football field, a baseball field, and a modern high school. This is his story. The world was at war in 1944, and it was a tough time for everyone. Good news was hard to come by, but Reedsburg received some great news on July 11, 1944. That was the day former Reedsburg resident Herbert Hiram Webb, who was 86 years old by the way, established the Herbert H. Webb Reedsburg Trust. It was in the amount of $200,000. The trust fund changed the landscape and future of Reedsburg forever. The trust fund was the beginning that turned 60 acres of marshland into park and swimming pool, a new high school with athletic fields for baseball and football. It also brought the development of Webb Boulevard from 4th Street to 8th Street. Herbert Webb is probably the most recognized name in Reedsburg. Thousands of students attended the school named after him. Thousands of people have driven down Webb Avenue, and thousands of adults and children have played or gathered in Webb Park. But few know anything about one of the most generous benefactors in Reedsburg. Webb was born in Mexico, New York on July 16, 1858. His father was a farmer and a cooper that made barrels for the local salt works. His father became sick and died in 1865 at the age of 32. 4 years later, Webb's grandfather moved to a farm in Sandusky, Wisconsin. He brought his daughter-in-law, Herbert, and his brother to live on the farm. She remarried, and her husband bought 20 acres from her father-in-law. Webb's neighbor taught him how to shave hoops for flour barrels, and he used this skill to make hoops that he was able to sell in Reedsburg. One of Webb's customers for the shaved hoops that he made was Harrison Hostler Dry Goods Store. He got to know John Hostler, who was the bookkeeper for the store. Webb's relationship with Hostler inspired him to head off to Valparaiso, Indiana, to attend business school. After a year, he graduated as a bookkeeper, and he knew he could get a job anywhere he wanted. While many of his classmates headed for Chicago, Webb knew he wanted to return to Reedsburg and work for Harrison Hostler. So, in 1881, when Webb was 21 years old, he went to work for Harrison Hostler as a bookkeeper. When Webb was shaving barrel hoops, he met Dick Schwakey, who was the clerk at the store. Schwakey was 14 years old, but Webb was impressed on how Schwakey was always thoughtful and willing to do something for his customers. When Webb came back from business school and went to work for H.H., Webb persuaded Schwakey to take a business course. Schwakey headed for Milwaukee, and while there, corresponded with Webb.
I brought up the idea of going into business with me. Dick was delighted with the idea and said he had the same thoughts, but had not dared to say anything about it. The partnership of Webb and Schwakey was formed at that time, but to be consummated when opportunity afforded it. There were no vacant buildings in Reedsburg at the time, so we just had to wait.
On December 1st, 1883, Herbert Webb, 25, Dick Schwakey, 21, and brother Gus Schwakey, 19, opened their store as Webb and Schwakey. The boys' store, as nicknamed due to the youth of the owners, was open for business. Despite the competition, Webb and Schwakey's company prospered. At the end of their 3-year lease, they built a new store on the corner of Main and Walnut. 10 years later, in 1896, they expanded the size of their building north from the alley to 2nd Street. They were now the largest retail store in the state of Wisconsin outside of Milwaukee. The boys' store eventually became known as the Big Store. In 1900, Webb made a change to his marital status. He married a local lady, Carrie Clisby. She, along with her sisters, ran the Clisby Photography Studio located on Main Street in Reedsburg. In 1907, Webb and Schwakey dissolved their partnership. Webb and his wife moved to Chicago, where he eventually bought 800 acres of land in Des Plaines. The area was developed into building lots, and Webb's fortune increased considerably. Carrie died in Chicago in 1921 at the age of 61. She was buried in Reedsburg, and Webb then moved to Los Angeles for a while and ended up in Wickenburg, Arizona, 40 miles northwest of Phoenix. In 1944, he created the Reedsburg Trust Fund in the amount of $200,000. Another $100,000 was added later, bringing the total to $300,000. By August of 1951, the fund had generated over $69,000 in interest, and the city began planning the future park. The land where Webb Park is located had limited use prior to the establishment of the park. Webb Avenue, formerly known as Water Street, went only as far north as 4th Street up until the 1950s. There was also a prisoner of war camp, built to house 137 German prisoners of war. The camp was in existence from June to August of 1945. The prisoners were brought in from Fort McCoy to work on local farms and canning companies. The camp was located just west of the water tower, near where the swimming pool is located today. In 1951, Reedsburg organized the first official Little League team in Wisconsin. A temporary field was built in the same area where the POW camp was previously located. The Little League Park soon moved to Oak Park, where it is still being used today. Webb moved back to Reedsburg in the summer of 1951. He brought the trailer he had been living in while in Wickenburg and parked it in a lot owned by Philip Schwakey, the son of Webb's early partner, Gustav, at the corner of Walnut and 8th Street. In July, some friends gathered at Schwakey's house and celebrated Webb's 93rd birthday. He liked the idea of living only a block from the area soon to be developed into the city park, but he wasn't done yet. The next year, in April of 1952, Webb dropped another bombshell on the city of Reedsburg when he announced that he was going to designate money from his estate to help pay for a new high school. The current high school was no longer able to support the growing population, and the city was in the early stages of planning a new high school. A leaflet was distributed throughout the city asking that the citizens vote to allow the city council to proceed with building Webb Park. The leaflet also suggested that the high school be built just north of the park. Too swampy was the reason for the opposition to the location of the park and the new high school. Webb's leaflet, along with his intended donation, changed everything, and by May, work was being done to develop the park. Work on the park progressed rapidly, and Webb Park was ready for dedication just 3 months later in July of 1952. On July 6, 1952, Webb Day was celebrated by over 500 people who had gathered around the bandshell in City Park. In his remarks, Mayor Leo Schaffetzel said,
"Today, on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of Reedsburg, it gives me great pleasure to accept the gift publicly and to thank Mr. Webb, who through his kindness and forethought has helped to make Reedsburg a city of which we can be justly proud."
The highlight of the gathering was the presentation of a hand-lettered scroll signed by Vice President Alben Barkley, Wisconsin Governor Walter Kohler, Secretary of State Fred Zimmerman, U.S. Senators Joseph McCarthy and Alexander Wiley, Attorney General Vernon Thompson, and 9 U.S. representatives from Wisconsin. At the finish of the program in City Park, the high school band led the parade to the south entrance of the brand new Webb Park. There, a sign provided by the Chamber of Commerce was unveiled. Webb Park was officially open. Plans for the new high school were also underway. Construction on Phase 1 began shortly thereafter, and the warm fall weather and the mild winter allowed construction to continue for most of the winter. On Sunday, January 24, 1954, Herbert H. Webb passed away. Funeral services were held in South School Auditorium to accommodate the large number of people in attendance. Downtown businesses were closed from 2:15 to 3:30 in honor of Webb. The following week, it was revealed that he had left his estate of $386,000 to the city to be used for construction of the new high school. The only stipulation to that gift was that the new school be named after him. He also requested the park be completed within 3 years. As of February 1954, Webb's financial gifts to the city amounted to $686,000. In 2020 dollars, this is equal to $6.6 million. The original trust fund of $300,000 also generated $100,000 in interest by this time. 3 years later, in 1957, everything was finished. Webb Park saw the addition of a brand new swimming pool. The boulevard facing the park was completed with lighting, and the final building phase of Webb High School was finished. The swimming pool was featured prominently in the Miss Wisconsin pageant held in Reedsburg that year when photos of the contestants were taken there. The pool was dedicated Sunday, July 28, 1957. Several hundred people showed up for the ceremony, which included diving and swimming demonstrations. The newly crowned Miss Wisconsin, Joan Henschel, made an appearance with Mayor Herbert Kleber. Mayor Kleber was ceremoniously tossed into the pool with the help of a local merchant, Roy Holzmiller. The high school was finished by the start of the school year in September. It was dedicated on Sunday, December 15, 1957, when 2,000 people attended the open house at the school. State Superintendent of Public Instruction, George Watson, was the main speaker.
Mr. Webb has created a lasting memorial for the community with his donation, which made this school possible.
The building was expanded 2 more times, once in 1962 and again in 1970, when more classrooms were added each time. A new high school was built on the west side of town in 1998, and the Webb High School became Webb Middle School. Today, the park swimming pool is used daily throughout the summer. There are 3 shelters, a playground area, and a war memorial located in this park. In 1974, work began on a nature trail that wound through the land previously covered by water before the dam was removed. The trail was named after Roger Popple, environmental science teacher at the school and project director of the trail. The trail exceeds 2.5 miles in length. In 2017, disc golf came to Reedsburg when the Half Moon Lagoon disc golf course was built as part of the nature trail. In 2020, the Webb Trust Fund was valued at $2.5 million and generates $50,000 a year in interest. Interest income from Webb's trust fund has generated approximately $2 million and has been used for exclusive public purposes of the city and for the welfare and benefits of its inhabitants. Herbert Webb was buried in Greenwood Cemetery next to his wife Carrie. While Webb spent half of his life living away from Reedsburg, he chose to spend the last few years of his life in a place he truly loved. The park and the school has become a great legacy for Herbert Webb that will be enjoyed by citizens of Reedsburg for many, many years to come.